Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. I think I have somebody waiting. One moment here while I get my chat set up. Hope everybody is doing well on this Friday evening. There's always this one last step that I forget about. Is that the right link? There we go. Let's see. There we go. Nano Akia. Am I saying the name correctly? Nano Akia? I think so. I hope so. I apologize if I'm not. Happy to have you here. Really wanted to do kind of a bonus live stream about accessibility. I have a lot of content coming up that I'm planning, and I feel like the content that I have planned sort of requires this baseline understanding of how I view accessibility and my expectations around accessibility. And I think if you're a new developer, or if you're just new to front-end development, accessibility can be a complex, overwhelming thing to think about or to deal with, especially when you're new and you're dealing with, the layout and the CSS, and if you're new to JavaScript. Oh, and then you have to make sure it's all accessible. And I can tell you that up until very recently, I've had this very bad habit of bulldozing my way through a project and then treating accessibility like an afterthought. And I've done it. Even in the stream, I've done it. If you've watched any of my streams, I always tend to treat it like an afterthought because we get so focused on the JavaScript, the CSS, the layout, things like that. So I'm trying to make sure that accessibility is a part of my workflow as I'm building, that I'm taking things into consideration. And that's only an experience that you can have if you, first of all, understand accessibility, and second of all, embarrass yourself as many times as I have by not thinking of it early and often. So I thought, let's just have a conversation about accessibility. And we are going to read this article from WebAIM, Web Accessibility in Mind. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat. There we go. So the WebAIM Million is a project that started in 2019. And this is data that is gathered every year. They study the home pages of the top 1 million websites online. And they have a methodology for how they choose these sites. We're going to read through this article, and then we're actually going to head over to the browser and VS Code, and we're going to write a little code. We're going to talk about the data that is collected and called out in this report, and how we can look for these things and correct these mistakes in our code. So we're going to read through this first, and then we're going to hop over to VS Code and write a little HTML and CSS. So I think it's going to be a fun night. I know, I'm looking forward to it. All right, there we go. So the WebAIM Million project, for the 6th consecutive year, WebAIM conducted an accessibility evaluation of the home pages for the top 1 million websites. The evaluation was conducted using the Wave standalone API with additional tools to collect site technology and sector data. The results provide an overview of and insight into the current state of web accessibility for individuals with disabilities, as well as trends over time. So the sample. The Million homepage list was derived from the Tranco ranking, which combines several sources of top websites. So sites without home pages, pages that returned errors like a 404, pages with fewer than 10 HTML elements, and pages with more than 5,000 links to the same domain for SEO purposes were not included. The Wave accessibility engine was used to analyze the rendered DOM of all pages after scripting and styles were applied. Wave detects end-user accessibility barriers and Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, conformance failures. All automated tools, including Wave, have limitations. Not all conformance failures can be automatically detected. Absence of detected errors does not indicate that a page is accessible or conformant. So I'm glad that they call this out. Although this report describes only a subset of accessibility issues on only 1 million home pages, this report provides a quantified and reliable representation of the current state of the accessibility of the most influential pages on the web. So, detected errors. Across the 1 million home pages, 56,791,260 distinct accessibility errors were detected, an average of 56.8 errors per page. 56.8 errors per page. Incredible. The number of detected errors increased notably by 13.6% since the 2023 analysis, which found 50 errors per page. Errors are Wave-detected accessibility barriers having notable end-user impact and which have a very high likelihood of being WCAG 2.2 level A or AA conformance failures. This chart shows the average number of detectable errors per home page over time. And again, they started this in 2019. So homepage complexity. The home pages tested had nearly 1.2 billion page elements. Home page complexity increased significantly in 12 months from an average of 1,050 elements in February 2023 to an average of 1,173 elements per home page in February 2024, an 11.8% increase. The following chart shows the number of home page elements detected over the last 6 WebAIM Million studies. So clearly this is trending up. The number of homepage elements increased 11.8% since 2024 and has increased 50% in the last 5 years. 4.8% of all homepage elements had a detected accessibility error. So 4.8% of all homepage elements had a detected accessibility error. Users with disabilities would expect to encounter errors on 1 in every 21 homepage elements. I mean, these are big numbers. These are big numbers. Okay, so there's a note here about error density. Error density, or the number of errors divided by number of page elements, is provided in the site lookup, but is an unreliable metric of site accessibility. A significant number of page elements, div and span elements, for example, may result in a lower error density, suggesting better accessibility, when in fact many new accessibility errors may have also been introduced. This report focuses on average number of detected errors, likely end user barriers present as opposed to error densities, or how diluted those errors are within page elements. There was a correlation between page popularity and home page complexity. The top 100,000 pages averaged 1,424 elements, or 45% more page elements than the last 100,000 sites in the sample, which had 980 elements. So, WCAG conformance, 95.9% of home pages had detected failures. This improved slightly from 96.3% in 2023. Over the last 5 years, the pages with detectable WCAG failures have decreased by only 1.9% from 97.8%. These are only automatically detected errors that align with WCAG conformance failures with a high level of reliability, which suggests that the rate of full WCAG to A or AA conformance was certainly lower. I know this feels a little bit dense, but I promise you the information is good, and we are about to get to the juicy parts. There are juicy parts here. So this chart shows the percentage of home pages with detected conformance failures over time. And again, it varies by percentage points over from year to year, but not by much. So while the rate of pages with no detectable errors was very low, 22.2% of pages had 5 or fewer detected errors, and 31.2% had 10 or fewer. Over the last several years, the proportion of pages with fewer errors has increased, while the number of pages with many errors has also increased. Pages with fewer errors have gotten better, while pages with many errors have gotten worse. And so here are the most common. These are the 6 most common errors on these 1 million home pages. And to me, it's shocking what these things are. Some things are less obvious, and I could see where if you were a new front-end developer or new to accessibility, you might be surprised or not realize that you're making this mistake. But there are a couple things here that I think are absolutely shocking. So low contrast text was number 1. Percentage of pages, 81, had low contrast text. Missing alt text. I think this one is pretty interesting, and I'm looking forward to the conversation around this. But 54.5% of elements had missing alt text, so images for the most part. Missing form labels, 48.6% of pages had missing form labels. And I run into this on almost a very regular basis. I'm moving forms from maybe an old content management system to a new content management system, and the old forms that I'm moving don't have labels. It happens all the time. Empty links and empty buttons. And these are the two where I feel like it's very common to have links and buttons that are like an SVG, and so I could see where it would be easy to leave out the text. One moment here, I have allergies. My nose is running. And then missing document language. This to me is the most surprising, that 17.1% of pages had missing document language. And so we're going to go through each of these things and talk about them. And look at how consistent these 6 things, these 6 categories have not changed over the last 6 years. So 2019 is when they started doing this. And at first I felt like this was shocking, but then I thought, well, if the top 1 million home pages have, for the most part, existed over the last 6 years, this is less shocking to me. I think what maybe the shocking part is we all know that there have been many new home pages built over the last 6 years. So why do they consistently all have the same errors? So 96.4% of all errors detected fall into these 6 categories. These most common errors have been the same for the last 5 years. Addressing just these few types of issues would significantly improve accessibility across the web. This sentence alone is the reason why I wanted to do this stream and talk about this. Addressing just these few types of issues, just these 6 things, would significantly improve accessibility across the web. I want new developers, new front-end developers, people who are new to accessibility to understand that if they focused on these 6 things, they could help significantly improve the web for people who rely on accessibility. I think accessibility can be incredibly complex and confusing, and I've been doing it for a while. And there's certainly more to it than just these 6 things, but in light of this data, if you can focus on these 6 things, you are clearly going to be well ahead of the curve. Well ahead of the curve. So over time, the number of pages with low contrast text, missing alternative text, empty links, and missing document language has decreased, while the number of pages with missing form input labels and empty buttons has been largely unchanged. That doesn't surprise me at all. Especially, like I said, the missing form input labels, it is so common. Same with buttons. I think the missing alternative text is an interesting conversation. So I'm looking forward to getting into the code editor to talk more about that. So now they sort of break down what each of these things are. And they have a few extra things here to talk about outside of these 6 categories. So low contrast text below the WCAG 2 AA thresholds was found on 81% of home pages. This was the most commonly detected accessibility issue. On average, each home page had 34.5 distinct instances of low contrast text, up 13.7% from 30.4 in 2023. Now, they don't say what circumstances or what the context is of this, but I strongly suggest it is the number of home pages that put text over top of banner images and banner videos. That's what I think it is, because I see it so often, text over top of images. You really need to put something behind that text. I think it's just a bad idea altogether, but the least you can do is put something behind that text, even if it's got some opacity, to give that text enough contrast. But it could also just simply be that you're not checking to see if the text has enough contrast against the background. But I suspect it has a lot to do with banner images and banner videos. So images and alt text. Home pages are becoming increasingly graphical. There were over 55.6 million images in the sample, or 55.6 images per home page on average, a 28% increase over the last year. 21.6% of all homepage images, 12 per page on average, had missing alt text, not counting an empty alt attribute with an empty string. And this is really important because we can tell screen readers, hey, skip this image. You don't need to read this image. And the way you do that is by including the attribute but leaving the string empty. So you're essentially declaring that it's a null value. So people either know that and omit the entire attribute, or they're just simply don't think that alt text is an important attribute. I would like to think that they're making a mistake in omitting it because they think they're telling a screen reader to skip it, but they're probably just don't realize that it's an attribute that they even need to have to begin with. So that's why I think alt text is an interesting one, and it makes sense to me. So again, you can tell it's perfectly fine to tell a screen reader, hey, skip this image. It's not part of the narrative. It doesn't add value to whatever storytelling is happening on the page. So just skip it. And the way you do that is by including the attribute, but as an empty string. 14.6% of images with alt text had questionable or repetitive alternative text, such as alt equals image, graphic, blank, a file name, etc., or alternative text identical to adjacent text, or the alternative text of an adjacent image. Yeah, I mean, we work really hard where I work we work really hard to make sure that we are appropriately adding alt text to our images. In our CMS, content creators cannot add an image without alt text, and we put every page through a workflow that gets checked, goes through a two-part check on the back end to make sure that images have the appropriate alt text, and not just anything, but like something that accurately in one sentence or less describes the image. Or well, I mean, we actually don't leave it as even an option to omit it from screen readers. We have made a decision as a team and as an organization that every image will have alt text, period. But it's not required. It's okay if you decide to omit it as long as you do it correctly. So these data show that one may expect 1/3 of the images on popular home pages to have missing, questionable, or repetitive alt text. Form labeling. The number of form inputs on home pages has nearly doubled in 5 years, with a notable increase of 22.6% in the last year, from 5 million to 6.2 million. 35.5% of form inputs identified were not properly labeled, either via area labeled by, or title. And I'm going to show you Label tonight with a way to make sure that you can appropriately hide your labels so they're still accessible by a screen reader. And here's where we get into a few extra things here that aren't specifically part of those 6 categories, but still important findings. So headings, 23.8 million headings were detected, nearly 24 on average per home page. The number and prevalence of headings were H1, H2, H3, so all the way through H6. The number of headings present on analyzed home pages decreased 4% from 24.8 million in 2023, reversing a trend of increases the previous 4 years. Because headings are the primary mechanism used by screen reader users to navigate content, their proper implementation is important. 16.8% of home pages had more than one H1, a decrease from 20.1 in 2023. There were 1,058,992 instances of skipped heading levels, like jumping from H2 to H4, 1 in every 22 headings. Skipped heading levels were present on 37.9% of all pages, down from 42.2% in 2023. 11.3% of pages had no headings present at all, up from 7.9% in 2023. So I'm going to guess at what is happening here, because I've seen it so many times with content creators who don't understand page hierarchy, or just even with my own clients who I've built websites for, which is that I guess I can only use my own experience, but I will intentionally make sure that I'm styling everything H1 through H6. They figure out what those styles are, and then they apply a heading based on the style they want for their heading, not really understanding why that's not an appropriate way to style your headings, not understanding the importance of why headings are so important for screen readers. They're important for SEO. They add structure and just give your page and your content so much semantic value. So this does not surprise me at all, this trend in this data. So regions, 76.7% of home pages had at least one region or ARIA landmark defined, a decrease from 80.9% in 2023, though an increase from all previous years. A main element or main landmark was present on 39.1% of home pages, down slightly from 41.5% in 2023, though an increase from all previous years. 15.5% of home pages had a search landmark, down from 21% in 2023. What's interesting about this is that I didn't start using Main until, I mean, recently. It's maybe been 2 or 3 years. I didn't start using Main until very recently. So I think it's really important to make sure that you've got your body, and then within your body, you have your header, your main, your footer. Those are the three things that anytime I start a new project, I add those three things immediately to make sure that I don't forget them. But yeah, main's important. Main's and see these types of attributes or elements are, they just add so much value to a page, not just for SEO, but for screen readers. They add hierarchy and structure to a page. They're so important. Okay, so ARIA. 89,050,856 ARIA attributes were detected. 89 per page on average! Exclamation point. ARIA code usage increased 15% in just 1 year and has more than quadrupled since 2019. So this is great. This is great. This chart shows the number of ARIA attributes per home page over time. The prevalence of ARIA labels and descriptions increased 26% in just the last year. Home pages averaged 19.2 ARIA labeled by, or ARIA described by attributes. 74.6% of the 1 million home pages used ARIA, excluding ARIA landmark roles. Home pages with ARIA present average 34.2% more detected errors than those without ARIA. One would expect to encounter an additional 15 potential barriers on home pages with ARIA present. So let's read this again, because it's I know some of the information is a little bit dense. It is it is for me. 74.6% of the 1 million home pages used ARIA, excluding ARIA landmark rules. Okay, home pages with ARIA present averaged 34.2% more detected errors than those without ARIA. One would expect to encounter an additional 15 potential barriers on home pages with ARIA present. Increased ARIA usage on pages was associated with higher detected errors. The more ARIA attributes that were present, the more detected accessibility errors could be expected. This does not necessarily mean that ARIA introduced these errors. These pages are more complex, but pages typically had more errors when ARIA was present. 6.7% of home pages had an ARIA menu, role equals menu, up from 5% in 2023. But 28% of ARIA menus introduced accessibility barriers due to the lack of necessary ARIA menu markup and interactions. Home pages also averaged 15.5 ARIA hidden true attributes, up from 13.7 in 2023, 11 in 2022, 8.9 in 2021, and 6.6 in 2020, and 3.1 role button attributes, down from 3.4 in 2023, but up from the previous years. Home pages averaged 23.1 instances of tab index 0 or tab index -1, up 16% from 19.9 in 2023, and up 95% from 2020. So I think this is interesting. I don't know what to think of this. I personally don't use a ton of ARIA labels. I don't need. I think I was under the impression that ARIA labels weren't necessary if you were using semantic appropriate HTML5. I use ARIA hidden true on SVGs. I can't think of any other place that I use ARIA hidden true. I don't use ARIA hidden true on text that I want to hide from a screen reader. This is interesting. Do you see where this gets complex? Links. 13.2% of pages had ambiguous link text, such as click here, more, continue, etc., a decrease from 17.3% of pages in 2023. These pages had 6.3 instances of ambiguous links on average. This is another thing that we do where I work, where we don't allow click here, more, continue, etc. We discourage that, and we depending on who it is that's reviewing your page, if you're a content creator in my organization, that could get rejected, and you may be asked to rewrite those. Skip links. 13.3% of home pages had a skip link present, down from 17.2% in 2023. 1 out of every 10 skip links were broken. Either they were hidden in a way that made them inaccessible, or the link target was not present in the page. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Doc types. This is the one that did surprise me. 91.6% of home pages had a valid HTML5 doc type, an increase from 89.8% in 2023, 86.1% in 2022, and 79.1% in 2021. Pages with a valid HTML5 doc type had significantly more page elements, average of 1,213 versus 745, and detectable errors, average of 57.1 versus 53.2, than pages with other doc types. 511 unique doc types were encountered in the million-page sample. 511 unique doc types were encountered in the million-page sample. How many are there? That's crazy. That's wild. So the rest of this really talks about the categories, the top level domains that these million home pages are associated with. The technologies like the content management systems, the JavaScript frameworks, the libraries, the web frameworks, e-commerce, advertisement networks. So I think that this is interesting, but it's slightly less interesting. And I really want to get over and actually write a little code to make sure that we can visualize some of this. So right off the bat, doc type, here it is. This is the doc type. This is an HTML5 declaration. So let's just go over to MDN. 511. Definition of the doc type in the HTML specifications. Let's go back. Too much information. In HTML, the doc type is the required doc type HTML preamble found at the top of all documents. Its sole purpose is to prevent a browser from switching into so-called quirks mode when rendering a document. That is, the doc type HTML doc type ensures that the browser makes a best effort attempt at following the relevant specifications rather than using a different rendering mode that is incompatible with some specifications. The doc type is case insensitive. The convention of MDN code examples is to use lowercase, but it's also common to write it as doc type uppercase, HTML lowercase, which is how I do it. Yeah, that's the doc type. So let's just go back. I just feel like I didn't read that correctly. Let's go down to doc type right here. 511 unique doc types were encountered in the million-page sample. What does that mean? I don't understand how 511 unique doc types were encountered in the million-page sample. So, number 1, doc type. This is one of the six things. What's the next? Let's just go up to the main list here. So low contrast text. So I have kind of a little practice site here. So let's see if we can see what the text is. Now, a lot of times in the browser, Chrome especially, will let you check your text. So if we hover on the color, contrast ratio, it will tell us, it will detect the background color, and it will tell us if we are meeting that contrast. It will tell us if we are meeting the contrast standard. And this is 7.0 is AAA, but we are meeting the AA. The contrast ratio is 6.36. And we can check it up here as well. And so our header meets both AA and AAA. And if you need to change your color, you can do so right here in the browser. I don't think you can. Yeah, I don't know if you can change the background here. If you're not able to check in the browser, I think we can just do contrast checker. You can come right here to the WebAIM contrast checker and just pop in your background and your foreground and check your contrast. So I would highly recommend that everybody do this. But I think this is an example of what I was talking about and what I suspect is happening on a lot of these home pages, which is that people are putting text over top of images or videos in banners. And you can see here that WebAIM has put, even with a little bit of transparency or opacity, they put something behind their text, but really they have a solid background against their text, and then they have that against this opacity, and then they have that against this image, which is already blurred out. So it's okay to do this. You just want to make sure that you're still meeting this contrast standard. And in general, it's a bad idea to put text over top of an image just point blank. I would really recommend not doing it and making sure that you're always checking your contrast checker. Your contrast, I'll put this in the chat. A lot are possible misspellings. That's a good point. Also, if your doc type is not HTML5, what are the old XHTML doc types where you had an actual link? Let's see. Can you tell me some old XHTML doc types? So how much you want to bet the uniqueness was because of a lot of these URLs? That could be another reason. So these doc types were replaced by the simpler HTML5 doc type, which is much less strict and compatible across browsers without needing a DTD reference. Yeah, this is so misspellings and just sort of this outdated reference in general, I'm guessing. So good point. Good point. So let's go back to, oh, come on. All right, so doc type, check. Color contrast, check. Stay on top of your designers and make sure that they are giving you designs. If your organization has dedicated designers, make sure they're giving you designs where you're checking the color contrast. Okay, missing alt text. Let's add some images. So we have our header, our main, and our footer. I'm going to go ahead and add a section here. And I'll just call this the image section. And we'll do a couple of figure tags. We'll do an image, and let's just do some lorem pixum. That looks good. Oh, hang on. There we go. Make this a little bigger. So alt text. I'm going to leave this one empty, and we'll give this a caption. Caption needs to be, yeah, we can just do we'll do a fig caption, and we'll say, empty alt attribute to signal to screen reader to skip this image. So that is the correct way to tell the screen reader, hey, skip this image. We don't need you here. It's okay. I'll say image container. So let's do another image. And this alt text, I'll say, fig caption will act as the attribute if you use figure. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I'm doing to you what my boss does to me. I'm so sorry. I hope it's not offensive. So this is saying, no, the fig caption element does not act as alt text for an image within a figure element. Here's how they differ. Fig caption. This is a caption for the entire figure, providing a description or context for the content within the figure. Are you saying that I'm not offending you? I hope that's what you're saying. I told my boss recently got onto the ChatGPT bandwagon. She did like an executive education course on AI and ChatGPT, and she came back and she was just like, she's into it. She loves it. But now anytime I'm in a meeting with her, pretty much anything I say, she runs to ChatGPT to verify if I'm correct. Not offended. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just hadn't heard this before, so I want to nail this down. But what you're saying doesn't, hang on, come on, chat. But what you're saying kind of makes sense to me at the same time. So let's see what ChatGPT says here. So fig caption, this is a caption for the entire figure, providing a description or context for the content within the figure, which could be an image, video, chart, or any other content. It's typically displayed alongside the figure, usually below or above the image, as a visible caption. Alt attribute. This attribute is added directly to the image tag to describe the image's content for accessibility and SEO purposes. It's essential for screen readers and for cases where the image fails to load, as it provides a textual representation of what the image depicts. So in their example here, the alt attribute, a scenic view of a mountain at sunset, describes the image specifically for accessibility and SEO. The fig caption, sunset over the mountains in Colorado, gives visible context for users, serving as a caption for the entire figure. Both are recommended for different purposes. The alt attribute is necessary for accessibility, while the fig caption provides additional visible context to users. Okay, that makes sense to me. The line is, there's overlap. I see overlap in these two things and why they're needed. I see the distinction in why they're different, but I see the overlap in what it is in the value they provide. I think you have a good point though, where if you're omitting the alt text, why would you have a fig caption? Right? Oh, and this isn't even fig caption. We have to fix this. In fact, I'm just going to take this out. Or am I? No, I'm going to leave this in. But we have to fix it. So for this, I will give this alt text of. So let's look at this example. So the alt text to describe the image, a scenic view of a mountain at sunset. The fig caption, sunset over the mountain in Colorado. So my alt text here would be random image from Lorem Pixum. This is so nuanced. Random image used as an example of images and fig captions. Very nuanced, very nuanced. And then the wrong example would be simply that you omit this altogether. This image has no alt attribute and text. This is not accessible. So to me, accessibility is progressive in that the more usable it is for some with disabilities, the more usable it is overall. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. I also am an overthinker, and I kind of thrive with rules and boundaries. Tell me if you're the same. Especially where accessibility is concerned. Especially where accessibility is concerned. I overthink a lot of things. And sometimes I overthink. One moment. I overthink to the point where I just want somebody to tell me what all the rules are, because so much of this feels extremely nuanced. But thank you for the conversation. Thank you for telling me about your experience and your approach. One of the many reasons that I decided to start this channel is because I wanted to have these conversations with other developers. So let's write a teeny tiny bit of CSS so we can style our images. So image container, let me get this out of the way. So we'll take the margin off by default. Do I have, let me see here. Let's make sure our images are responsive. I'll go right up here. Whoops. Max with 100%. Oh, Angela. And height auto. And then I'm not going to do anything too fancy. We'll just say width. So I get sidetracked a lot by researching accessibility while coding and looking for best practices and up-to-date data. Same. I get sidetracked. Sidetracked's a good way to put it. For me, I just start overthinking everything. For a long time, I worked for a university, and our back-end team had a student who was blind and relied on a screen reader, and he did all of our accessibility testing. And that was one of the most incredible experiences. I learned so much from him because he wasn't a coder, he wasn't a developer, so he couldn't tell me what to go do. He could only tell me the result of the before and the after. So I learned on my own what did and didn't work just based on whether or not he could really navigate the desktop and mobile experience. And I learned a lot. And I try to keep it simple. I really, really do. I try to keep it simple. So I'm just going to make our image container 50%. And let's flexbox. Oops. Let's put this in a section. Actually, let's put a wrapper around this. I'm just gonna say, honestly, the image container should probably just be well, actually, do I even need this? I don't even think I need this div. I can just use my section. So image section. Flex flow. I'm just going to say column wrap space. I don't even think we need. Do a line. Items. Well, we don't even need that because default is flex start. And then my image container will be 50%. My images will fit inside of that. Let's see here. Why are you not falling below? Oh, with the 100%? Do I have Flexbox up here? I do. Let's just take out this. Do I need Flexbox on my main? I wasn't planning on overthinking this tonight. Where's my main? Well, we can probably just make this 100%. That's probably why. There we go. Okay. There we go. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. I'll put a little space between those. I'll spiff those up. Yes, agreed. In-person testing is always the best. The first time I got feedback from this particular student, I had built this, well, it wasn't super complicated, but it was like a filter and it had drop downs and it had all these options, and I had built several of them, and I had in the back of my head, oh, I better go back and like check on some of the accessibility stuff, but I just never got around to it. And then this student went and actually tested some of it and just gave me this giant, overwhelming Word document filled with feedback, which is embarrassing. I don't like that feeling. It's embarrassing. So that just happened here probably in the last 5 or 6 months. So that has really been the catalyst for me to like get more on top of this and not treat it like such an afterthought. So, and I've known about this WebAIM project for a long time. So, image container, let's give this a little bit of margin beneath, just to space it out a little. There we go. And let's make this, well, I might spiff this up. I might add some styles to this at a later date. She's looking pretty blank. Empty, alt attribute to signal screen reader to skip the image. There we go. Okay. So this is a good example of images and a really good discussion about alt text with fig caption. So yeah, I like that. So let's build a form. Let's do it. We'll call this the form section, and I'm just going to do form with a class of form, and we'll just keep it simple. So I'm going to do a label for, we'll say first, we'll say first name. And we'll say first name, and then an input type text ID is first name, and we'll do name equals first name if you're using an API. And so this is we also want to put a class on here of access hidden, and then I have screen reader friendly. Do I have screen reader friendly? I don't think I have an access hidden class here, so we'll go ahead and add one. let me go grab one from my GitHub. Here we go. It's okay to hide something with display none or visibility hidden, but your screen reader will not read that out. It's appropriate in so many situations if you are hiding off-canvas navigation and you want the screen reader to only focus in on the button. Once you hit that button and you remove display none or visibility hidden, then it's visible to the screen reader. But as long as you have a button that triggers that, it's okay to hide it that way. For anything else that you want to hide, form labels are an ideal thing to hide for your form styles, but you have to hide them in a way where your screen reader can still come through and read them in a screen reader friendly way, and this is an ideal way to do it. So let's go ahead and add and then we'll use a button. That's a great example. A button's a really good example of submit. And then this will be last name, and then we'll do email. And this is how you associate your labels with your inputs. Let's add a space here. You give your input an ID, and then you tell your label that it is for that ID. And now we have inputs, but we don't have labels, but we're hiding them in a friendly way. So we can also go ahead and put in placeholder, which is not a literal placeholder. It's just visual for the people who can see. So there we go. And we've got focus. Beautiful. And then here's our button. So I think it's really common. Let's see here. Let's go find an arrow. Do we have like a is there like a submit? We'll just do like an arrow like this. So placeholder is bad for people with cognitive disabilities. I think I need a definition of cognitive to fully understand that comment. What is a cognitive disability? A type of impairment that affects mental processes like memory, problem solving, attention, comprehension, and decision making. Learning. Cognitive disabilities can vary widely in severity and affect individuals differently. They may impact how a person learns, remembers information, processes language, makes decisions, or interacts with their environment. These disabilities can be present from birth, develop over time, or result from injury or illness. All right, well, I can see why placeholder could be difficult for people with cognitive disabilities. So I'm curious, when you're doing your form building, do you make sure that you're always including labels, or do you make sure that do you use values? What do you, I'm just curious, what do you use? I tend to use placeholder. Is it because, okay, so the placeholder is still there on focus, but as soon as you start typing, it disappears. Yeah, I'm just curious knowing that how you handle that. Okay, so let's grab our SVG. So you work, let's see here. I work from the assumption nothing should be hidden. Interesting. I mean, would I say that I hide quite a bit? I mean, I feel like I hide things like navigation drawers or an off-canvas search element, things that rely on a button or a button getting focus in order to show it. What else do I hide? I do hide form labels. Do I hide anything else? Form labels. I mean, I hide, well, there's more examples. There's more examples to come. Actually, I hid that in the wrong place. Let's go to projects. Let's go to you are here folder. Assets. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So I think this is an example. I suspect this is exactly the type of thing that WebAIM is calling out as an example of a button, and we can't really see it there. Stroke current color, let's put in just black. I think we just need to give it this. There we go. It was, I think it just needed to be, it needed to be display block. It has a tendency to happen when I put them in buttons. So I think this is a great example. I think this is extremely common that people put images or SVGs in buttons and they don't add text. So this is another example of text that I would hide, where I would put in a span with a class of access hidden, and I would say submit. And I think any button that is inside the form element submits the form. I'm pretty sure that's right. So now we have an accessible button even though there isn't any text. Although I don't know if this is a good example because I don't know why anybody would just put an arrow, but it could happen. It's a possibility. So let's go ahead and style this a little bit. I'm not a designer. I was kind of thinking today that I was going to spend time like building out this page. I had built out this site last week for another video that I made, and I thought, oh, it's perfect. I have like this little practice site I can use as an example. And I thought I should build all of this out before the live stream, and I just didn't have time to today. So, and I thought, that's no problem. It's no problem. You could just like bang this out. Nothing's ever that easy. Nothing is ever that easy. But I don't mind. There we go. First name, last name, email. I'll just give these a few little styles. Section. But I might work on this a little bit tomorrow, make it a little bit prettier. So I'm just curious, in your opinion, given that you work from the point of not really hiding anything, I am just curious your honest opinion on hiding text the way that I'm doing this. Do you have a different approach? Do you prefer styles where the label is, I mean, these are all examples, these labels in this span, where a design could 100% support showing these words. So would you approach this as like, let's just design this in a way where everything is visible? I'm just curious what your approach would be. I don't think that this is a design. I'm choosing this approach for the sake of illustrating the WebAIM Million study. That is why I'm choosing this approach. I think that it would be perfectly reasonable to show labels and to show a button with text and an SVG. But I'm just curious if this is an appropriate way to do this in your opinion. Let's see, form section. We'll just do form section input. None. Order. And I think that's text. Border style. Let's do this. Solid. Yeah, there we go. Nice and simple. And I think that I'll go ahead and do Flexbox on the form. Just to get everything lined up nice and neat. Display flex, flow, row, no wrap. Space. Oh. specify content, space between, and align items. I'm just going to do center. There we go. I personally would never hide a label, as you can use CSS to move it over the input if the design requires it, but would try and get the designer to not have that kind of design. That is totally fair. That is totally fair. Yeah. That's the rub, isn't it? That's the rub. And we don't have a dedicated designer at our organization. We have a creative team. We have a pretty well-defined, brand for our organization. We have a person on our team that does a lot of design, but it's not his sole responsibility. And quite frankly, a lot of the design is left up to me and my junior developer. And yeah, I mean, that's something that I hadn't really considered before. So I'm going to think more about that. Thank you for your input and your feedback. I appreciate it. I really like knowing what other people do. There we go. And we'll give our button a little bit of style. Appearance none. Suppose I should take some of my own advice. Okay, so we have one H1. We'll do an H2, and we'll call this, I'm just going to call it class H2. This is the main header. I'm going to do, we'll give this an H3. We'll call this a class H3, and we'll call this the section header. Let's see what kind of styles the browser gives us. Yeah, I'm fine with that. And then we'll give this also an H2, class of H2. This can be another section header. Call the section header form. Call the section header images. All right, this is a start. I love this. I love having like a little playground site where we can experiment with our accessibility and experiment with some styles and get feedback from other developers about what they do, how they approach things. This is all about learning from each other, seeing what other people do, how other people approach things, consulting ChatGPT, because technically ChatGPT has a lot of really good information. And yeah, I love this. I love these types of conversations. And like I said, if you're a new developer or you're new to front end or you've been doing this a while and you're like, oh, I guess I need to start thinking about accessibility now. I think thinking about this WebAIM project as a way to kind of get started understanding what are the most common problems, what like this is a staggering thing to me that 1 million of the most popular homepages on the internet, like 96% of the problems fell into these 6 categories. That's a staggering number when you think about the complexity of accessibility and how, if we fixed these 6 things, how much better the internet could be. So just ease into it. Start to understand some of these basic concepts, these basic things, and I think the rest will start to come naturally. Leverage ChatGPT. Ask questions like we just did. Ask questions if you're confused or you need clarity. WebAIM, they also have classes. Let's see here. Is it under services? Oh, and they're mostly owned by the biggest companies in the world, which is so upsetting. 100% agree. What I was thinking about when like the related to the images, let's get over to these images. I was thinking something like Amazon. Oh man, do I even want to do this to myself tonight? If we go to Amazon, I mean, when you think about some of the numbers of images, if you're having a hard time wrapping your head around a homepage that could have that many images, Amazon's the perfect example. And I think we've been saying for years that Amazon has some of the most ridiculous, ridiculously busy, weirdly poorly designed pages. So they do have alt text here. I think that let's see if we can open this. I suspect that this alt text is the name of the product. Which is maybe not inappropriate. It's an appropriate label. I think there's a lot of nuance in how you word your alt text. We have content people where I work who spend a lot of time on that. Yeah. So totally agree. Totally agree. It is very upsetting. Here's the thing that I have to remind my boss of all the time, because she's a great boss. She's very good at what she does. She's been in this business for a long time. She does have a tendency, though, because we're a university, to, if she's wondering how other universities are doing something, she'll go to Yale or she'll go to Harvard or Notre Dame or things like that, and she'll start looking at the other big universities and following their lead. And I don't think that that's a bad thing to do. But also, we have to remember that those web teams, those organizations are run by humans. Just because they're big, prestigious, popular universities doesn't mean that they don't employ humans who are making mistakes, who are not well versed on the topic, or who are guessing at what the right thing to do is. So, don't assume that because it's Amazon or Google or Meta or whatever, that the way they do things is the right way to do things. We're building a new template where I work, and we're using Google search engine, and GSE has a script and we use them for search. And so we embedded the script, and I actually really like the script because it's not an iframe. It embeds it. It gives me full access to the markup and classes so I can change the styles, and it works really well. And our analytics and SEO people really like it for managing all of our sites, blah, blah, blah. But looking at the markup and how they structured the markup and how they wrote their CSS was crazy to me. Like, it was crazy to me that Google did they put the intern on the team in charge of writing the CSS for the script for GSE. That's what it felt like when I was going in and styling that form. So just because it's a Google or a Meta or an Amazon doesn't mean that the humans who are in charge of that is are doing the right thing all the time. They're always making the right decisions. They're humans, right? Abdallah is here. Can I say hi? Yes, of course you can say hello. Welcome. I'm happy to see you. You're in Egypt, which means it's probably the middle. I'm guessing it's the middle of the night or very early in the morning there. So thank you for joining us. We had a really fun stream today talking about accessibility. And we did your code review last weekend on Sunday for your front end mentor product list with cart, which was you did such a nice job. I'm so impressed with you and the work that you did on that. So I'm excited to get your feedback when you go and have time to watch the video. And thank you for joining us. I had one other point that I wanted to make. What was it? I don't remember. Oh, I do remember. It was that WebAIM has some training. Let's see if we can find it here. Resources. Let's see here. WebAIM. Is it a webinar? I did it. The Virtual Web Accessibility Training Fall 2024. So I did this a couple years ago and it was excellent. It was so good. If you're in a position where you can do some sort of training like this, it's basic. They do have on-site training. I think they're in Utah or Idaho if you're in the US, but they also have virtual training, I think over Zoom. And the groups are pretty small, so there's lots of opportunities to participate, ask questions. It is jam-packed with information. It's really good training. I did it 3 years ago I did this training. I kind of want to go back and do it again because I think there's a lot that I've forgotten, which is what happens sometimes. See, this is why another reason I started the channel was to practice more, because for the last 7 years I've been working on the same set of files. I mean, I do bug fixes, I write a fair amount of JavaScript, we do build new things, but I don't really get to practice like this. I don't really get to build new things from scratch outside of what I'm doing at work. So I might go back and redo this training just to refresh my memory on a lot of these things because I'm just so out of practice. So if this is something you're in a position to do, or if you can find something like this near you, I would highly recommend it. But yeah, like I said, even just being familiar with, let's get back to the WebAIM Million. This WebAIM Million and these top 6 issues, it's a really good start. It's a really good start and a really good way to position yourself to make the web better. So I think this is what I've got for the night. This definitely wasn't one of my biggest streams, but it was something that I really wanted to do. I wanted to get this on my channel as something that was evergreen, because I am planning some videos that I think I want to make sure that there's just some baseline content of when I talk about accessibility, what is it that I mean? And this video or this channel or this stream will serve as sort of a baseline of how I'm approaching things. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining and for participating and giving me your feedback and answering my questions. And Abdallah, thank you so much for joining at the towards the end here. I know you are clear across the other side of the world, so I really appreciate when you're able to join and say hello. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope that everybody had a great week and has a great weekend coming up. I have streams planned on Saturday and Sunday this weekend for front end mentors. I hope we can get the product list with cart finished. I'm really looking forward to working on that. And yeah, thanks a lot for joining me. I appreciate you all and have a great night. All right. Bye bye.